So, Joseph, news this week that Zhou Yongkang has finally been placed under formal investigation. What does that mean for the Chinese market?
Well, I mean, it's big politically because he was a former standing member of China's Politburo, so it's quite a big catch, I guess, for the corruption campaign in China. But, I mean, in terms of the market's reaction, you have to remember that Zhou Yongkang was quite tied to China's oil and gas industry, going quite some way back, and in particular to CNPC, of which its PetroChina unit is listed in Hong Kong, and it's been interesting to watch how its share price has reacted to news about the investigation. At like a year ago, when it first became clear that Mr. Zhou might be investigated, the share price dipped. In the year since, however, it's risen about 17%, and this week its share price has dipped and then risen again. Partly because it's quite a big moment for China, but also it appears that it removes an overhang from the company if he's being investigated, and the wider reform case for PetroChina can sort of go forward.
So what is the wider reform case for PetroChina? How have its returns been? Does it look like a decent investment prospect?
Well, I mean, if you're buying the shares here, you're paying about 11 times earnings, which is perhaps rather indifferent. But underneath, the return on invested capital is 9%, and you have to remember its capex bill in the last few years has been a pretty large $50 billion, and it has fingers in many pies, shale gas with Kunlun Energy. But you would expect for an emerging markets oil company, it should be trading with a bigger multiple and with a better return on invested capital. So now, if the past and Zhou Yongkang are behind it, you could argue it's going to be a lot more transparent about where it's spending its money.
So the suggestion may be that actually the capex bill reduces because there are fewer connected transactions to dish out. What does that mean for are there any other companies that might be impacted by this, just skating over the surface a bit?
Well, I mean, the oil and gas sector is where all the big capex is, but you have to place the Zhou Yongkang investigation as part of a wider purge and wider anti-extravagance measures. And this week we saw Diageo point out, for example, that its Baijiu business in China isn't doing so well. It took a write down there, and it said, well, it won't perform well for another year, but it can sort of see it brightening further ahead. But the question for an investor, and not just in PetroChina, is, well, does Zhou Yongkang mark the top of the corruption investigations, or is this really the start of a wider continuing purge in the Communist Party?
So for some it's good and for some it's bad. We'll just have to try and cut between the two. Thanks very much, Joseph.